welcome back. This time another desktop tutorial, and we're actually going to be doing some more material stuff in this tutorial. It's in desktop just because I'm really busy right now, and this one should be quite quick. So I got a question at 5 a.m., which is okay, last night from BigRedWolfy. They asked two questions. First of all, they asked, what do all of these do? And then they also asked how to use dynamic variables with materials. So I thought I'd go over both in sort of one video. I do have videos on dynamic variables, so that'll be linked in the video description, and on material apply policy, which will also be linked in the video description. But hey, maybe we'll make a new series of just prime answers random questions in the form of a video tutorial, because sometimes that's easier than typing when it comes to news. So we'll start with the dynamic variable question. So if you don't know dynamic variables, there's a full tutorial series linked in the video description. So they want to use dynamic variables with the material system. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and create an empty object, and we're going to use the world dynamic variable space. For those unaware, the world that you're in, every single world has a dynamic variable space attached to it, which you can use. Usually we don't use it because it's kind of rude to use in other worlds, but if you are the maker of the world, go ahead and use it. So for materials, there are what's called a reference data type. You can see here inside data dynamic that there is reference types. You'll see reference, 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 and there are value types, value, 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 value. That is because there are two different types of values that you can play with inside of Neos. There are values, which are really simple values, things like integers, floating point numbers, strings. I just called floating point numbers simple. They're anything but. But anyway, and then there are complex data types, which are passed around by what's called a reference. You can think of these as slots, users, materials, assets like audio and textures and stuff like that. Those are passed around by reference. So a material is actually a type of reference. So for that, we're going to be using dynamic reference variables, dynamic reference variable drivers, etc. Let's create a dynamic reference variable, and then this box will come up, and you're like, oh, what do I type in here? Now, there is a wiki page on what you need to type on here for various types of assets, but I also have this in the world, and you can find this in my public folder. Where is it? Oh, it's all the way over here. So the one that we'll be needing today is FruxEngine.material, so I'm going to bring that over here. Like I said, you can find a link in the video description to a wiki page which details how these are formed and what they do, or you can just spawn it out from my public folder. It's inside the logics folder. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this, which is the one for material, drop it in here, and we get a dynamic reference variable, a asset provider material. Now I'm going to just label this as world material for the dynamic variable name, and now what we need to do is create an object that will use that material. So I'm going to go ahead and create a box, inspect this box, and take a look at it. So the box here has a single material on it, and what we're going to do is assign that material based on that dynamic variable. So to do that, we're going to go to Data, Dynamic Reference Variable Driver, and we're going to drop in iAssetProvider FruxEngine.material. And then on this one here, we're going to name it the same as here, so world/material. And then for its target down here, we're going to specify it being the first material of the mesh renderer. So we can just drop that in there like that. Now you see that this has gone to checkerboard, and that's because we don't have a material specified for this dynamic variable. Let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new material. We'll do PBS, and I'll make it, I don't know, red's always good. And I'm going to grab this material orb, and I'm going to put into the dynamic variable here, and you'll see that the cube has now gone red because it is taking that material. You can also write to these variables using, again, the dynamic variable nodes here. Do be aware that when you're making nodes like this, you won't find material in here. So you need to go ahead and make the node for dynamic variable iAssetProvider material. So to do that, also have a video tutorial on that one, but I will do it here as well. We'll create another empty object, attach component logics, and then find variables. In this case, we're looking for write dynamic variable. Go up to the top here, and again, we need to drag in iAssetProvider FruxEngine.material. That goes in the top here like this. Once that's in there, just grab your logics tip and then unpack the empty object, and you'll see that a node appears, and then you can use it. So this one, what we can do is we can say, hey, we want to write to the world material slot, and we want to write a material to it. We also need to put a slot in there, so we'll go to slots root slot. If this isn't making sense, by the way, it is the dynamic variable tutorial that you need to watch. There's quite a few videos there. This is sort of, has that as a sort of prerequisite. So now if I had another material, I'm going to grab a blue one. So PBS metallic, and we'll make this blue. We can also grab this, push this, and then we get the logic interface card for it. And then this, plug into here. And now when I hit pulse here, this cube should turn blue because I'm assigning to the world dynamic variable, the world material dynamic variable, I'm assigning this blue material. So hit pulse, it turns blue. And if we come across to here, you'll see that this is now that blue material. So there you go. That is dynamic variables and materials. Moving on to the other questions, they asked what most of these do. Now, material apply policy, I'm going to skip over because I do have a video on that one. Material apply policy, there's a video link in the video description. It prevents you from applying materials to things. Like as an example, my avatar, you can't apply materials to. Very simple. All you do is you attach the component material apply policy, which is in assets tagging. And you just leave this as can apply, set to no, and then people won't be allowed to apply materials to you. I do this because material applying is either seen as a joke, and I don't think it's a joke. Please don't do that on my material, or an accident, and in which case I don't want that to happen either. I would recommend that you do a material apply policy on your worlds before you publish them, particularly the floor, and you can also do it on the skybox slot. So if you find at the world root is the skybox slot here, you can apply that component to there, so assets tagging material apply policy with can apply set to no, and what this will do is it'll prevent you from changing the skybox as well. So if you're publishing a world, I recommend you do that for the main world geometry that you stand on and for the skybox as well, and then any accidents won't cause issues with the world, etc., things like that. So that's a material apply policy. More information can be found in the video link to the video description. So that is those done. Next we have to go over hierarchy, material target, material relay, and mesh renderer material relay. These are all kind of the same and somewhat difficult to explain. I have found an example which should help, which is on the avatar to the left, but I'll try and explain them. Hierarchy material target just signals that a particular object that you're hitting is an appropriate and valid target to look for materials in. In this case, we could apply hierarchy material target to an avatar, and that would signal, hey, when I shoot a material orb in the material tooltip at this avatar, look for any mesh renderers underneath this avatar and apply that material to it. So it's sort of like anything parented to a hierarchy material target will then be affected by that material orb shooting. I'm not going to set that up because it isn't really used that much in practice. I looked in the source code. It's used in one place, and I don't think it's valid. Sometimes that just sort of happens, sort of layovers from older versions or whatever. So I will skip over the rest of that one because it's not really used. Instead, what's used in favor of that one usually is material relay and mesh renderer material relay. That is a mouthful. So over here I have the Nexavali from our Neos Essentials folder, and you'll see that a default avatar actually has one of these components, and this is the mesh renderer material relay. What this does is this says to Neos again, when I shoot the material tooltip at this avatar with a material, so I'll just grab this blue one here. You'll see that the entire avatar goes blue. Now, we talk about this one in a bunch of tutorials on stream as well. We talk about it basically everywhere. It's in a video of mine called Working with Multiple Materials as well. The reason that this is actually occurring, and here, like the more you know, that meme, is because of this component, mesh renderer material relay. When you shoot a material tooltip at this avatar, it collides with the avatar and it looks for one of these components. So it finds it, mesh renderer material relay. And what mesh renderer material relay is saying is, hey, all of these mesh renderers underneath this hierarchy root, so underneath Nexavali here, should have the material which you just clicked and shot at me applied. So you'll see it goes through all of them. So wings, chest fluff, tail feathers, ear fluff, body, tail skirt, and crest, they all get that material applied to them because of the mesh renderer material relay. To illustrate that, what I'm going to do is go ahead and clear out some of these. So let's go ahead and clear out body, which will be the most sort of impactful one to see. So I'm going to go ahead and clear out body. So that's now no longer on the list here. If I go back to my material tooltip, you'll see that when I'm shooting the Nexavali now, the body material isn't applied. That isn't blue anymore, and that's because it's been removed from mesh renderer MeshRendererMaterialRelay. That's a really long and complicated name of a component there. In practice, I don't know why you might set this up on an object that you do. It's automatically set up on every avatar that you make if they have multiple materials, so it's here. I don't really know why you'd manually set it up. You can if you can think of a choice to use it. So that is MeshRendererMaterialRelay. Now on to MaterialRelay, which functions a lot similar to the one we just saw, but a little bit differently as well. So I'm going to go ahead and inspect this cube and add it to that. So again, it's in Assets Tagging, and you're looking for MaterialRelay. If we go to MaterialRelay, it does exactly the same as the other one that I'm not going to say again because it's very complicated to say, but it just applies to materials rather than to entire mesh renderers. So for a mesh renderer, it will go through every single one of the materials on those mesh renderers. So each of these mesh renderers might have more than one mesh material on it, and it'll apply to each of them, whereas the MaterialRelay will only apply to individual material slots. To illustrate that, I'm going to go ahead and remove the MeshRendererMaterialRelay, and I'm going to go down to the body here so I can actually go ahead and find, where are we? Find its material list. You see here it's got 6 materials on it. With the MeshRendererMaterialRelay, it will apply the blue material to each of those 6 materials, but with the MaterialRelay, you would need to specify them manually. So I brought over the inspector here so I can show you doing that. So here I've got the material ref set up, and instead of applying the the mesh renderer, like I did with the previous one, I instead have to do each individual material goes into here. So in this case, what I'm saying is the first 3 materials on this list will be targeted by the material which I shoot that blue cube over there with. So I need to remove the dynamic variable as well because that's currently being driven. There we go. So if I were to go ahead and take out this blue material, replace it with a red one, shoot this cube, check what's going on here. Oh yeah, it worked. It just it bypassed the blue cube itself. You see here that the body materials, the first 3 got applied to this red material, and the other 4 that are there still have the appropriate materials here. So clause I, you see the eye still looks like an eye rather than being applied to that. If I were to do more work on here, and I were to say, for example, add another couple of slots and then drag in the eye slot, where is it, 5? And then once again, shoot that cube, which I should probably bring over here now. You'll see that now I'm shooting this. The eye is also going to be affected as well. So there you go. Like I said, I don't really see that there's any real need to use HierarchyMaterialTarget these days, or MaterialRelay, or MeshRendererRelay, but maybe you'll come up with some use case for them. In general practice, I find myself not using the material tooltip these days. I will instead sort of manually copy around the materials. That's usually because I'm doing science or something more precise, and what I need is the ability to basically be really explicit with where my materials go, and so I don't want to use the material tooltip in that case. But that's an explanation of those components, and with that, I've also completed another folder on the attached component menu list that now has documentation about it, so fantastic. I'll see you next time.